is March 14th, 2025, and we now have US President Trump pleading with Russian President Putin to spare the lives of the remaining Ukrainian soldiers in Russia's Kursk region. Now, as a reminder, they're in Russia. They took part in this incursion into Russian territory, and now they're crying for help now that they have been completely surrounded by Russian forces and that their incursion has been defeated. Trump is speaking out as if this is just a group of ragtag Ukrainians that stumbled their way over the border and got stuck. But Putin is pointing to the fact that, as Russian officials have been revealing this week, the crimes against civilians, the horrific crimes that were carried out by these Ukrainian forces during this incursion against Russian civilians in the Kursk region were horrific. And we are just now seeing just how gruesome and how bad things actually were on the ground. So as you have Putin drawing attention to that, he's also saying, hey, if these soldiers want to lay down their arms, if they want to surrender, then their lives will be spared. He's also calling on Kiev to order its own troops to surrender. So where could this go from here, and what does it mean for the overall conflict and those ongoing negotiations that seem to be happening between the US and Russia, and also the US and Kiev? We got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Andrei Martyanov, a veteran, author, and Russian military expert. Andrei, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
My pleasure, always.
Now, I'm glad I get to talk to you today. There's been a lot going on, so let's get into the latest here. So, as we know this week, officials from the US and Ukraine got together in Saudi Arabia and decided that they would present Russia with a 30-day ceasefire plan without consulting Russia and apparently without listening to everything that Moscow has been saying for months now, saying that that would not be acceptable. Now, Russian President Putin did not come out with an outright no, but he did give a very diplomatic version of saying yet on this, right? He said there are a number of preconditions that have to be considered. This is a very complicated conflict. So how do you view his response to what was presented to him?
Well, he told them to go pound sand. So they thought that they can issue this childish so-called kindergarten level diplomacy, that they can issue some peremptory thing. Well, Russia can issue peremptory things on her own, and they are much more, weighted, so to speak. So yeah, it's just all maneuvering for the show off, for PR, and save their remnants of the forces in Ukraine and NATO forces there, and in some way to retain Ukraine, whatever will be left, as some kind of future arm against Russia. The United States is in their, existential fight with Russia. The way United States today exists with its political and economic system, it's the existential enemy of Russia and Russian people. So, and Trump is no different. So he's just, less aggressive outright. The rest of it, Russia called the bluff immediately. And after today clownish request to spare the lives of those in Kursk, Mr. Vladimir Putin came out, and that one wasn't, how to say it, thinly veiled. This one was outright. They are terrorists. They have two options: surrender or die. That's it. Simple as that. So if Trump thinks that he can charm Russians into, Russian elites are way more experienced and educated and cultured than Washington D.C. So they can maybe produce impression on some, I don't know, not on Moscow.
Yeah, it was interesting to me to see that statement that Trump made when he, I guess, posted on Truth Social, and he's calling out to Putin saying, I'm, pleading with you to spare the lives of the remaining Ukrainian soldiers. And then he says, God bless them all. And it's like you take a step back and you go, okay, what do we know about these soldiers? Well, they chose to, or rather, Kiev chose to launch this incursion into Russia's Kursk region. We're not talking about pre-2014 Ukrainian territory here. And then on top of that, Russia has been coming out this week and talking about the atrocities that these forces have committed against the Russian civilians in this region. So Putin isn't exactly in this position where he wants to, just send them all home. No, he's saying, hey, this is a very serious situation. And also, Russia has complete control here. What do you make of kind of how we've gotten to this point in the Kursk region and how the US is, I guess, attempting to handle it? I don't even know how much attention Trump has paid to it beyond just this week.
Well, it was planned primarily in NATO and British. The United States also took part in the planning of this adventurism, military amateurism, essentially. They said, oh, yeah, let's go, just invade Kursk, and then we'll get to the Kursk. We'll take the Kursk nuclear power stations. The guys evidently do not study well in military academies in the West, which are primarily a joke, academically. And so they ran into this wedge, which was initially about the size 159 square miles. So it's half size of the New York City. And boroughs. And so, they killed to death 67,000 people. They're full thousands of the pieces of equipment. It's just unbelievable. 330 tanks. I mean, altogether 5,000, armored cars and automobiles. On top of it, they have like 1,000-something APC. So it's just like complete devastation. You can look at the videos there and you see yourself. It's just absolutely littered with bodies. They committed unspeakable atrocities. So United States, it is well known, Europe and NATO supports neo-Nazi regime in Kiev. Simple as that. I mean, so and when Trump says the massacre since World War II, dude, take a look at what have been done to actually retreating troops in Iraq, the highway of death and all. There you go, So now they try to talk to country which are about to celebrate in May 9th, 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. And they talk about some kind of, it's pathetic, really. It's pathetic. It's being laughed at. It's embarrassing for them. And as the famous dictum by Mikhail Kutuzov, one of the greatest Russian strategists who defeated Napoleon. Well, obviously, French will never admit that Napoleon was defeated, but they are French, they're losers, basically. So, and the question is that he stated, those who do not have forces to continue to fight, they cannot demand peace. Simple as that. They have been defeated militarily, and this is the way to basically face the reality. Plus, keep in mind, Russians were taking a lot of NATO so-called advisors or mercenaries. Well, most of them probably cadre officers and cadre soldiers. So, as POWs in Kursk, they were actually very effective as barrier troops. They are good at shooting into the backs of their retreating Ukrainian soldiers. They actually execute each other really well. So, and this is one of the concerns of Trump, I think so, that a lot of those people, many of them have been already taken POWs. So they will be singing as birds at the International Tribunal for the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes on the former Ukraine now Russian territory. And Kursk especially. Maria Zakharova the other day broke down in tears when she was talking about how children have been executed. So this is who United States supports. It supports Nazis, period. And nothing could be done about it. No matter how you play it, no matter how you dance around it, no matter how you maneuver, no matter how you try to charm yourself. Trump took, he had the chance since the January 20th to change everything. 3 days ago, he made a choice to make this his war. Now it is his war, and the United States is defeated already, and then Russians are not in the business anymore to save America's face. We're not talking about Europe. Europe is irrelevant. They are chihuahuas. And so Trump could have had at least some chance to save America's face. He didn't take this chance, and now he is being humiliated basically in the last 48 hours, non-stop. And nothing he can do about it short of starting World War III, in which the United States will cease to exist. Simple as that. and that's how it goes.
Yeah, it's been so interesting to watch Trump. I mean, we saw him just a couple of weeks ago sitting there with Zelensky in the Oval Office, telling him and the entire world Russia is winning this war. Russia holds all of the cards here. And now it feels like he has completely forgotten that those words ever came out of his mouth, especially when it comes to the way that he's attempting to deal with Putin, right? He wants to meet with him in person. And Putin's sitting over here going, wait a second, you said we held all the cards and you were correct in that statement. Now, I do want to ask you about how we have come to this point in Kursk, because when you look back at last August when Kiev launched this incursion, it's as if they thought that Moscow was going to direct all of its energy to the Kursk region, right? That they were going to forget about the Donbass and come over here and target Kiev's forces here. But they didn't do that. And instead, they have systematically taken on this incursion over the course of months, saying, hey, Kiev, yeah, you send some of your best and brightest troops here. We'll handle them when they get here. And now in this week alone, you see them really forming this cauldron around the Kursk region. You see, or specifically around the main town of Suja. And you also see this Operation Pipeline that has been even making some headlines in Western media when it comes to how Russian forces have targeted these Ukrainian troops. How do you see this battle in particular and kind of the way that Russia approached it?
Oh, Russia approach is the same as the Russians approach most of their wars. The problem is the NATO military are incompetent, including their top brass. They are incompetent people. They don't understand the war. They never fought one. All this, this nauseating narratives about, oh yeah, we defeated, 5-year-old kid in the sandbox, in Iraq. Really? Have you fought a real enemy? No, they don't. They don't understand. They don't have reference. What is being presented as the military history in, for example, United States military academies and even war colleges is a joke. As are the professors who teach it there, they basically tell them fantasies. It's fairy tales, and so now suddenly they see the real war. The technology is backward from NATO. It's totally obsolete. And they don't understand operations. They don't. They never dealt with this. They don't understand what combined arms operations on the scale of even special military operations are. And so, well, they planned this because they thought, I wrote 4 books on that. United States, and let alone again Europe, those clowns from MI6, Chatham House, and whatever the hell is there, which is the pretentious, pompous morons. So they don't have strategic planning. They don't understand what strategy is. They don't understand the enemy, in Russia in particular. They live in this echo chamber because of the low intellectual level, enough to read the, what's the name on Foreign Affairs, the rag by the Council of Foreign Affairs. They have State Department, which is a joke, Pentagon. There are no people of honor there on the upper crust who could come in and say, dudes, do you understand what we are dealing here with? Except they know there's nuclear weapons. That's about the level of the extent of their understanding of the modern combined arms operations. And that's what happened. That's why they killed. Basically, the West was already on the precipice, and now they are falling into abyss, and it's the end of the combined West, as we know, because the guys, again, like, Russians have the proverb. Every 100 years, combined West gathers and goes to go to Europe to get its ass handed to them. So there you go. This is yet another one. So they learn nothing, and it's not actually absolutely not surprising, considering the fact that practically the whole military history of the West is confabulated. They confabulated the history of the World War II. We defeated Hitler. No, you didn't. So, and you don't even understand the scale and the intensity of the Eastern Front. Most of them, they do not understand. They don't study real strategies. They do not understand what a real military education is. So, and as a result, you have a bunch of the nincompoops there who think that, yeah, let's go, let's see. Well, they went in, the farthest they reached was 20 kilometers, I believe. And again, it was primarily by the small groups. And here we are today, it's gone. And so the rest of it, so 70,000, they killed the combined arms army there. And they killed the best of the best Nazi fanatics, best of the NATO. mercenaries and things like that. So of course they're hurt now, and that's pretty much it. So the 18 and 14-year-old kids have been taken prisoners of war by Russians in Kursk. Women are now fighting in the front lines there. So there you go. That is why there's this so much attempts to do the ceasefire, because their mobilizational potential is practically exhausted. The only thing that they have left is around 160,000 18-year-olds between 18 and 20. This is the last sperm bank for Ukrainian nation. So if they want to throw it in, the Russians gladly will oblige, and they will just basically grind it into their, just bloody pulp. And simple as that. That's why this whole hustle, this activity, suddenly, as per Trump, despite the some critical good appointments such as Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel, and believe me, Trump now is getting the real intelligence. That is why this panic. So is that he still retains all those warmongers, neocons, Christian Zionists, and all those, a bunch of the crazes. So yeah, the only thing which changed, as I already stated, is the modus operandi in terms of the public relations. He is a showman, always was, and will always remain so.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. And, as you were pointing out earlier, it's like Trump had the opportunity, right? He could have really changed course. He could have let this be Biden's war and said, you know what, I'm going to move on from it. But instead, he decided to make it his war. And he has done exactly that. And you see Kiev in this position where they had decided that Kursk was going to be their bargaining chip, right? That was what they
Mhm.
were going to bring to the negotiating table. Clearly, Russia made a very decisive, or had a very decisive victory on their end and saying, you are no longer going to be able to use this. But when it comes to any kind of bargaining, I mean, is there anything that Kiev or that the US really has on their side at this
No,
point?
nothing.
Because
Nothing, literally nothing. I was short of the World War III, but then again, Russians will oblige too if it comes down to it, and US will cease to exist. Simple as that. So yeah, there is nothing, literally, Washington. I'm not talking about Europeans. It's pathetic showing. It's laughable. It's a circus. Today, Rutte says, "Oh yeah, Ukraine will not be NATO." Well, he can say whatever he wants. Russians don't buy this. But the point is, they have to choose their own league when it comes down to warfighting capability and military history. United States is not in this league, bar some, outstanding performance of the magnificent U.S. Navy in the Pacific War, for example, Pacific Theater of Operations. How about they start learning the real history, not written by U.S. Army, by Wehrmacht officers who shaped the U.S. Army and their views on the war, while being, of course, losers. Well, of course, they always say that, yeah, there's a General Frost, or the Russians were just piled the bodies over us and things of this nature. So yeah, they have been moved and imported through the Operation Paperclip, and many of them literally wrote doctrines of the U.S. Army. As the result, they have no clue about the real history of the World War II. They don't understand Russians. They have no idea about Russian history. And yeah, as I already stated, when you learn from losers, who are you becoming? You're becoming a loser. And
yeah.
so it's simple as that, and that's what has happened. And this is now on the, and again, Russians not going to talk about Ukraine with United States. Russians are interested talking about the rather more global issue of the modus vivendi, because United States still is a superpower. It's not as big of a power as they used to think, and militarily it's not even in the same league with Russian armed forces. But the point is that obviously there should be modus vivendi between two superpowers, but nobody wants World War III. Nobody wants, this horror to happen. Are Americans ready to talk? Who knows? I mean, you know what? As Al Capone stated, with the good word and the gun, you can get much further than with the good word, the kind word alone, So this is what is happening.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to watch it unfold too, because, you go back to Trump. I know he really wants to meet with Putin right now, but if you look at this current situation, time is on Russia's side. And so you see
Yeah.
Russia in this position. They're like, sure, we'll talk. Let's have more meetings. We're fine with having plenty of dialogue. But when it comes to some of those preconditions that Putin brought up on Thursday, he also brought up the situation on the front lines. He said, look, we've got nearly 2,000 kilometers worth of contact lines. We need to talk about what would happen there if there were going to be some sort of an agreement, some sort of settlement. How do you view the situation on the front lines? And do you think that the US even realizes how dire it's becoming for Kiev, given the fact that we're seeing Russian advances at nearly every point?
They should have been already in this state of shock when Putin started about half a year ago using the term Novorossiya, as they called Novorossiya. Well, I made actually the video about it. That look up what Novorossiya means when Putin says, "Oh yeah, you want those rare earth metals? Sure, let's go join. Do the joint. Mining that in Novorossiya. Novorossiya is, of course, is this wonderful strip from the Black Sea, from Odessa to Nikolaev, and going all the way to the all the left bank of Dnieper, and even some places on the right bank. So yeah, but now listen. This morning, although we're looking at a realistic number, probably 1,200,000 at least killed on the Ukrainian side, and about 2 million wounded. I mean, basically done for life. And we have the 7 to 8 millions of basically refugees running around, so other 6 millions of Ukrainians trying, some got to Russia, 3 million, others are trying to get to Russia, and Russians are filtering them. So yeah, essentially Ukraine is a virtual state. If not for the support from the West, it would simply cease to exist. And Russian conditions are very clear. So, and Russia will control all of the Novorossiya, even if not necessarily, acquiring it, for now. So, and yeah, it's take it or leave it. I mean, they were warned. I was warning the United States in 2014. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And now I don't want to use this very profane thing, but it's FAFO, as everybody knows.
Right.
So they found out, and too late now, because their combined West is over, and United States probably will endure. Europe is done, and it was exposed for the paper tiger that all of it is.
Yeah, and it's also notable too, when you look at the way that Trump is handling this, as you were saying there, look, we know what to expect from Russia. We know what to expect from Putin for the most part. I mean, he may come out and surprise us every now and then, but his rhetoric hasn't changed. It has been spot on. If the US wanted to learn and really study Putin, they have plenty of material to do so. What are your concerns about where Donald Trump stands when he starts to get frustrated? Because right now, yeah, he's ramping up sanctions in a way against Russia, right? He's continuing the military aid, he's continuing intelligence
Yeah.
sharing with Kiev. So what are your concerns about what Trump could do if he starts to really try to quote unquote turn up the heat on Russia, even though we all know how that's going to turn out?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing he has at his disposal. What, does he want to start World War III? Well, be my guest. Russians have been ready for World War III for a long time. It's just that, suddenly he is getting frustrated because he's being humiliated, essentially. He is being paraded in a very polite way, which is even more humiliating. They expected Russians to say, "Oh, go screw yourself," and he said, "Yeah, you see, yeah." No, no, no. Russians do it politely, and they basically parade him as the paper tiger that he is. And yeah, what's left? Sanctions. Yeah. ISR, military aid. I don't think so. United States has resources anymore, unless they want to go and completely ship their whatever their table of equipment and organization, essentially, of the U.S. Army there. But it will be annihilated no matter what. So yeah, it's basically the end of the road in terms of this American elites or Western elites in general, who are as I already stated, highly ignorant, highly uneducated. Essentially, they do not produce statesmen; they produce politicians. Or Mr. Trump, apprentice, shows, those grandiose statements and things like that. So yeah, uh, that's the end of the road. But the only thing they have is to try to move grossly inferior U.S. army to the Europe, and start fighting Russians. See what's going to happen. So, and Russia has now 700,000 people in the reserve, highly trained, extremely well equipped, state of the art army, and they just keep it just in case if they have to go to the western borders of.
Yeah, it's yet another reminder that, hey, it did not have to be this way, right? How many
Exactly, yeah.
times has Russia tried, and has Russia almost pleaded with the West of, hey, we don't want it to get to this point, right? We've made it very clear what our concerns are, and the West refused to listen time and time again, and they kept poking the bear, and now we see these escalations, and they still don't see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, being uncultured people, and they don't have culture. They're not refined people, most of them. When you look at them, they're thugs, most of them anyway. Look at Victoria Nuland or this American media primarily. Even, Tucker Carlson stated, I quote him, every other of them is an asshole. So they are primarily, American media is 80% of the jerks. Many of them are war criminals. And so they do not understand things, which cultured people with tradition, and try to tell you, we don't want to kill you, dude, but just don't do that. And they say, oh, it's weakness. They are weak. They are, and then you cannot explain to these people. Did you see what happened to those American generals who have been around all over the place? They paraded themselves as clowns. They are incompetent. How the hell they were becoming, 4-star generals, and like the dudes wouldn't be able to command a freaking battalion in the Russian army. They would be laughed at, So, and this is what it is. And you cannot change this because they talk themselves up to the point of, with egos larger than cathedrals, and yeah, we are so good. No, you're not. So, and this is the fact that they cannot face. And because many of them are actually cowards, it's one thing to go and kill the Afghan, peasants and Taliban, which is primarily, armed with their RPG at best and IED. Try to survive when you have 152 millimeter shells landing around you, and then you have Mr. Iskander flying in. So you don't survive those things, So, and you have the whole doctrine, you have the whole set of the field manuals and operational manuals going to waste. It's garbage. They were written by people who were not ready to fight real war. They still think that they can maneuver. Well, some. There are now serious military professionals in U.S. Army who explain that, yeah, you cannot maneuver really. So, and what can I say? It's
Yeah,
a catastrophe.
Yeah, and they've literally given Russia the last 3 years to prepare, right? In a way, they've given them 3 years to really get it together with their military to prepare quite literally on the battlefield. Russia's ready or could be ready for a much larger conflict. And you look at the US and all of its allies in NATO, and it's like not a single one of them is remotely prepared. Instead, they've just been throwing, money, weapons, whatever at the problem and acting like that's somehow going to lead them to defeat Russia. It defies logic, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised at this point.
No, we shouldn't be. Yeah, it's all of it has been prepared since the times of the post-World War II conflict, where United States legitimately and justifiably shares the title of the victor in the World War II overall. Obviously, it is all about shares, who did what. But there's no doubt about it. But and another matter that Russians correctly view it as that the United States got into the Europe too late to just. Basically, it was about stopping Red Army, not about just really defeating Hitler. But the point is, since then, which war did U.S. Army win since then?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can show me the money, as Cuba Gooding Jr. said.
Yeah.
Show me the record. We apply for credit cards. I don't, but we apply, and what do? They check your credit score. Show me. Don't show me this 5-year-old, beating in Iraq. Wasn't in the war. And when you look at answer to which was Grenada. Yeah, we can say Grenada.
Right.
It's one Grenada. So, and yeah, show me the record. Show me where your concepts worked in the real scale. They can't. And that's the only thing they have. It's like, Al Bundy from Married with Children. The only bright memory he had was his 4 touchdown playing for Polk High School in football. So they have these 4 touchdowns with Iraqi army, which are semi-literates undertrained. Oh yeah, we were great. It's just like, so there you go. That's Al Bundy moment. And then suddenly they encounter what NFL team, and they're not ready. So simple as that. And as the result, we have this. It's a combination of the political, economic, and military crisis in the United States and in the combined West. And it is millennium event. So we are looking at the decline of the West. Essentially, not just decline; it's complete departure. Especially when you look at Europe, I don't think so. It's recoverable.
Yeah, and they did this to themselves, they went out there, they picked those
Absolutely.
fights, and it is just sad in some ways to watch, but also at the same time you have to remember, hey, they chose this battle and now
Absolutely.
Russia is responding. There's certainly a lot at stake here all around, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Andrei Martyanov, a veteran, author, and Russian military expert. Thank you so much for your time and
Thank you,
insight.
Rachel. My pleasure.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.